Every year, 100 million animals are being tortured, crippled, and abused in American labs. According to DoSomething.org, 92% of the products that these animals are being tested on fail in human clinical trials. 20 to 25 million birds, rats, and mice are all dying every single year. And the Humane Society said that in order for one pesticide to be passed, 50 experiments have to be done on 12,000 animals. Big business and corporations have been testing on innocent animals in the most inhumane ways possible for years, and it is time that it comes to a stop. The purpose of my speech to actuate is to shine more light on the cruel ways that animals are being put in labs and tested on, and I urge you guys to stand up with me as we fight these money-hungry companies and finally put an end to animal cruelty in labs. Now, to get a little bit of background on how long we have been testing on animals, I read a scholastic journal written by Ernest Weintraub, who found that all the way back to the 17th century, we have been torturing animals just so that we can get ahead a little bit medically or in the cosmetics field. In the 17th century, René Descartes came to the conclusion that all living beings were made up of matter and therefore had mechanistic properties. Humans were excluded from this because we were given a soul by God, and because we had a soul, that meant that no other living being had one, and without a soul you weren't able to feel emotions or pain or hunger. The conclusion made by René led scientists at the time to perform inhumane and very excruciatingly painful experiments on poor innocent animals. Dogs, for example, had their paws nailed down and they were cut open just so that they could see a beating heart. It wasn't until the 18th century that Jeremy Bentham finally argued that animals do feel pain and that it is our job as humans to not inflict pain on animals. A couple of reasons why big businesses are still testing on animals, and don't get me wrong, we do need to test products, but not on animals. A reason for testing products is that to see if it causes allergic reactions, to see if it can cause any skin or eye damage, to see long-term effects, to see if it causes infertility. But we don't need to be torturing animals the same way they did back in the 17th century. Our technology has evolved, our clothing has evolved, our homes have evolved, and so the way we treat animals needs to start evolving as well. The few tiny bit of progress that we've made forward is that the U.S. has passed an Animal Wellness Act. Now, this act does not very strictly regulate the way the animals are being treated, but it does make an attempt at stopping completely inhumane things. According to a Discovery News clip, the FDA does ask that companies use the fewest number of animals possible, but scientists are able to simply waive parts of the American Wellness Act with little to no reasoning and absolutely no repercussions. One big, huge step forward for the animal cruelty movement is that PETA's website said that the European Union has finally stopped testing products on animals. In 2003, they proposed the bill, and by 2013, you are no longer allowed to sell any products that have been tested on animals. If Europe is able to have a full consumer product without testing any products on animals, then we can too. And if we as Americans stand up and say that we don't want our products being tested on animals, then they'll stop. One big step backwards is that Scientific American said that China requires testing on animals. Companies who want to sell to China, and because there's not very strict regulations on how bad they're tested in America, they get two very big groups of people trying to buy their products because they test on animals. So other than the fact that animals are being locked in cages and poked, prodded, killed, here's a few more reasons why we should no longer test on them. According to a scholastic journal written by Hope Ferdslau and Nancy Beck, we have done studies recently that found that animals feel pain a lot more than we thought that they did. Way more. In fact, anything that hurts a human hurts an animal in the same exact way. Animals just don't have the ability to speak and verbalize how much pain that they're in. Tests have found that animals are very similar genetically in the fact that there have been reports of depressed animals, animals with mental illnesses, or ones that have social and developmental risk factors. Now, not only are they able to feel pain, but they can feel empathy. They have problem-solving skills. Animals have language-like characteristics. They groom themselves. They are way more human than we even realize they are, and hurting them is just as inhumane as torturing and killing people. According to a Discovery News clip, scientists in labs are genetically modifying mice and rats so that they have the same DNA as humans. So we are genetically changing animals so that we can test on them and then kill them, which is completely wrong and needs to be stood up against. PETA found that there's so many alternatives to testing on animals. On PETA's website, scientists are able to create 3D corneas and take skin samples to make artificial skin and test their products on that rather than animals. And in a lot of cases, it's more cost effective than, it costs a lot of money to keep animals in cages and feed them the little amount that they feed them, and testing with computers really saves them so much money. You would be surprised by how many companies are still testing on animals. And I know what you guys may be thinking, this is just the cosmetics industry, doesn't really concern me that much, but the FDA has a very, very wide definition of what cosmetics are. Deodorants, shampoos, face wash, lotion, all of those are considered cosmetics, and all of those are not very strictly regulated when it comes to how they're tested on animals. Big companies that still test on animals include Maybelline, Clean and Clear, Old Spice, Pampers, Windex, Johnson & Johnson. You would be surprised to look through your bathroom and see how many animals had to suffer because of the products that you have. Okay, so to conclude, abducting animals from the wild, breeding them in labs simply to kill them is inhumane and it's wrong. It is our job as consumers to stop buying products that are being tested on animals. We can't the average person can't walk into a lab and take animals out, but what we can do is stop buying products that are being tested on animals and donate our money to people who are able to go in and help those poor innocent animals. With the many available options for product testing, companies who still test on animals or people who support products that are being tested on animals might as well be torturing the animals themselves. Don't let another animal painfully die so that you can put on deodorant.